Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is part one of our service provider webinar series, where we'll be targeting specific challenges that FM service providers are facing in today's market. For today's topic, we will be focusing on how you can achieve the maximum levels of customer satisfaction and engagement across your client contract. We'll be discussing these challenges with various different stakeholders and clients to gain a range of perspectives. So across the series, there'll be different people on the panelists contributing to these challenges. And they're a result of taking on board client feedback, as well as harnessing the latest insights and trends from the FM industry. The aim here is to hopefully provide you, the listeners, the attendees, with as much learning and knowledge as possible to help drive change within your organisation. So before we begin, a bit of housekeeping. Please submit your questions using the GoToWebinar. Your feedback throughout the session is extremely valuable. We will send you a copy of the recording so you can actually play back at another time. And there will be a follow-up survey as well post the webinar. Again, feedback on this would be much appreciated. If you've got any suggested topics that you would like us to cover in the upcoming webinars, then please feel free to actually add them in and make them recommendations. So joining me on today's webinar, I've got two veterans in the product world within MRI, Carl Greenfield and Paul Durant. Some of you attending have likely had some interaction with Paul and Carl over the years. I did the math before we started the webinar, and there's about 44 years worth of knowledge and experience between us delivering technology into the FM sector. So hopefully what we're going to be talking about today will make sense and will come across as valued information. So today's agenda. Like I said in the opening statement, we've got a number of challenges that we're seeing within the industry, and more importantly, we're hearing back as client feedback. So we're going to start to set out those challenges, and I'm sure that the majority of which will resonate with all of you. We'll then start to look at some of the personas, and these personas are the actually existing in your client contract. They're the people that are experiencing the problem when relating to customer engagement and customer satisfaction. Then we'll start to look at the technology. So there's a few options of technology solutions that we've got, which will then feed into ultimately answering the challenges. So that's when we can then start to solutionize and start to address those challenges that we're going to kick off with. And then ultimately we'll start to wrap up with those next steps once we've been able to cover off all of the topics. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's going to introduce you into some of those challenges.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, as Carl said, we're going to start off by just highlighting what we think are three key challenges that affect you as service providers. The biggest one is about engagement, increasing the scope of your engagement with potential user community. And that includes how you get work requests from these people, how you manage to get them into your CAFM system. Secondly, how you improve the communications for progress and updates to these users. And then finally, how you can solicit feedback to drive continual improvement and innovation. Everything should be about how you can actually improve the efficiency and your relationships with your clients. As Carl mentioned, we're going to focus on three different personas that could be part of this customer base. We've broken them down here into different names. So we've got Fran and Harry, who form part of probably your in-house FM team. So your facilities managers, your help desk operatives, and then we've got Clarence. So Clarence represents probably the management team from your clients. Wendy, who would be the workplace occupants, so the staff, the people that work in the buildings that you manage. And then finally, we've got a persona which is probably not somebody that you're actively engaging with that often, which is members of the public. and in this case, that's represented by Peter. All of these different personas could use different software solutions within the Evolution ecosystem. Obviously, people like your facilities managers and your help desk staff are probably using the full enterprise software system, MRI Evolution. People like Clarence, your clients, and the workplace occupants would be using things like Reach, which is the self-service portal. Wendy could also be using a newer product we have, which is the At Your Service mobile app. And then Peter would be using probably some of our newer solutions that we're bringing to the market now, which is something called MRI surveys, a way to engage public or non-authenticated users and bring them into the ecosystem. So we're going to return to these personas quite a bit throughout the presentation. And for the solutions that we show, we're going to focus on Reach, we're going to focus on At Your Service and surveys, and try to show, going back to those three challenges that we articulated at the beginning, the engagement, the way that we can improve customer satisfaction, and the way that we can improve communications, how the different solutions would benefit these three different personas. So as I say, the three different products that we'll focus on, Reach, which many of you might be familiar with, which is our self-service portal. Just as a quick overview of what that does, it's fully configurable. So you decide what content you have within that self-service portal, and it can be branded to your organization. You can have different content displayed depending on the role or the accounts to access it. And it does a lot more than just engagement. It does a lot more than just work requests. It'll do things like visitor management. It will do room booking. It has quite an extensive suite of content publishing facilities such as reports, documents, and dashboards. But as I say, for this, we're really just focusing on the work request and customer satisfaction side of things. Secondly, we'll look at Your Service, and the persona that's most relevant to At Your Service is the workplace occupant. And the advantage of At Your Service is that it's fully mobile. It's fully configurable again, so you can decide what types of service you publish. And the idea behind At Your Service is it's a way for you to, or your user base, to request services from you, view things that are going on in the building. It's the one-stop shop for the workplace experience. Fully integrated with Evolution as well, I should point out. And then finally, service request survey. So this is a new feature, which is using our drag and drop survey designer tool, which there'll be a quick demo of that as we go through. It's a way for you to design your own forms and present them to different users. The difference here is that those users don't actually need to be account holders within Evolution, Connect, Reach, or At Your Service. They could just be members of the public. So if you think of a use case for that, you could have, you could be sending people emails, you could be putting QR codes throughout your building, and when scanned, they'll take users to forms whereby they can submit work requests or complete satisfaction forms. So returning to the three challenges, we'll start with engagement. And by engagement, we mean how you get work orders from the different occupants of the building, the different user personas that you interact with. And I've got on screen, I've just got a very quick summary of the different ways that work orders could be entered into a traditional Evolution system. We've got, as we've mentioned, Reach and At Your Service, but also third-party integrations, automated calendar tasks like planned maintenance or scheduled task templates, and IoT sensors, all of which could be feeding information into the system. And if you're using the Evolution Go app, then your mobile workforce could also be creating ad hoc tasks as they go. So the two that we're focusing on for this webinar will be Reach and At Your Service. And as I mentioned, Reach is the self-service portal, which is fully configurable, fully brandable. I'm just going to give you a quick tour of that system now. You can see that it has a top menu structure which you can design. This is just an example of the core request pages that you have within Reach. So you can make them as complicated or as simple as you like with the fields that you put on. I've just got a very simple request form, submit the job. The other features that you get within this content management system, if you think of a client manager, they may want to see things like planned maintenance schedules as well. So you can publish the PPM view. If you're using projects module and you want to keep your clients updated with project process, you can show things like Gantt charts for certain projects. You could also let them track mobile locations if you wanted to, all of which, as I say, is optional. This is just about the features that you turn on either within the system or per user. And it also has the advantage of the embedded intuitive dashboard. So here I've got some examples of the starter pack dashboards that you can give to clients or users of Reach. A lot to cover there, but it's reactive task analysis, resource efficiency, contract performance, lots of different good BI information. And then finally, the last thing to show here is just the live view. As I say, there's a lot more to Reach. And the user persona for Reach would be anybody that's got desktop. So it's important to mention that Reach is not currently a mobile solution. So it's very much about somebody that has access to a laptop or a PC that wants to be able to view anything that's going on in a building or multiple facilities. The second option, this is where we can talk about taking that experience for raising work requests into mobile using our At Your Service app. And at this point, I'm going to hand over, I'm going to make Carl the presenter, and Carl's going to give you a demonstration of the At Your Service app. Okay, Carl, that should be with you now.
Paul, while you hand over, it's just worth saying that, you know, when we're talking about user engagement by our clients, they often struggle to find the right solution to get out there. And sometimes it can be a mix, can't it? It could be a mix that we have reached serving and delivering a purpose on one side to one group set of users, but also go At Your Service to complement that. And that's what we're going to have a look at now. But often is the case, it can actually be both solutions really to provide a catch-all for everyone.
Yeah, I would think when we go back, if we went back to that slide where we listed the persona, obviously most implementations are going to cover all of those personas, and it's horses for courses. Even within one system, you might take one of those solutions, but you may take all three when it comes to raising work requests, depending on the type of users that you intend to interact with. And we'll probably return to it after Carl's demonstration. Once he's shown you the fully sort of mobile side of At Your Service, we can talk about how At Your Service might fit into the Reach experience as well. We'll come back to that one.
Super, sounds good. Right, over to you, Carl.
Excellent, thank you guys. So on screen at the moment, what you can see is the configuration element of At Your Service. Now, obviously, Paul spoke a little bit about what At Your Service is. So what we're going to do first of all is dive into the setup of At Your Service. Now, the important thing to note really about At Your Service and where it differs from sort of traditional FM portals is the terminology that we're able to use within this app. So what you'll see once I dive into a catalog is that we have the ability to fully customize all of the text that the end users are seeing on their devices. Now, obviously behind the scenes, these are linking back to proper evolution instruction sets with their correct categories and disciplines and contracts and everything else. But what we're actually able to see on the screen here is I can actually create a fully customized hierarchy of categories, subcategories, and again, as many as you like, as many categories, as many levels of subcategories as you like. But what we actually end up with is a destination, which is essentially an instruction set with an evolution. So if I was just to take one of these instruction sets here, what you'll see is this top field here basically is a live lookup to evolution. So based on the contract I've selected for this catalog, these are all my available instruction sets. So selecting power outage, what I'm now able to do is fully customize the title, short description, and long description that the end user will see. I'm also able to provide some iconography and some imagery that we'll see how that affects the app later on. There's also an options tab behind the scenes here where we can basically turn on additional features for that specific instruction set. So as an example, if this was a portering type job, where I maybe need to move some furniture, let's say from one location to another, I can turn that option on here simply by toggling that toggle there. And also if the job requires an appointment, so it requires an engineer to visit my property, I again can turn this option on and we will see how that affects the app later on. And the last section here on the options is pricing. Now what this actually enables you guys to do is offer services that are outside of contract and potentially chargeable to end users. So we've got a couple of examples in the app which I'll show you, but things like key cutting or car washing or sort of dry cleaning, those kind of options. Sort of, we're talking about sort of small things, not necessarily big quoted works at this point. But again, I'll show you an example of that in a moment. The last sort of thing really to say on the catalog creation, is that it's very user friendly. It's a nice drag and drop menu structure that we have here. So simply I could pick this particular service up and throw it into another category if I wanted to. I'll just put that back where it is. Okay, so alongside service catalogs, we have the idea of a survey manager. And what we're trying to achieve with survey manager is to really sort of replicate that help desk experience where, 99 times out of 100, any sort of task that I log through a help desk, the help desk operative would almost certainly ask me some follow-up questions. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. So if I look at a survey I made earlier, a temperature survey, this is for a nice simple job. So I'm going to call in this help desk call, and I'm going to say that I'm too cold. Now, again, like I say, the majority of the time, the help desk operative, no matter how simple the task is, would ask me some follow-up questions. And this is what we're actually able to replicate with this. So if we just look at the test survey here, what you can see is I'm presented with these 4 nice simple options, and there's actually some conditional logic behind the scenes of these, where if I was to answer no to not being the only person affected, I can ask some additional questions. If I was to say yes, there's a thermostat in the room, it can ask me what the temperature is displaying, and if there's any obvious openings or drafts, I can also prompt for a picture at this point as well. We could probably do a whole webinar on survey design. There's a great deal of stuff we can do behind the scenes with conditional logic and follow-on actions and those kind of things. So definitely, if you're interested in that, let us know and we can arrange some demos for that. What we'll do for now is we'll probably come out of config. There's a lot of stuff in here, but I'm conscious of time, and obviously I want to show you the main app more than the config. So let's switch to Evolution and we'll switch over to At Your Service. So what you can see on the screen now is my phone obviously projected on my screen. And this is the first screen that you're greeted with once you log into At Your Service after you've registered and those kind of things. So this screen here is the building feed. Now this building feed is made up of a certain different number of tasks, different type of tasks. So first of all, we have tasks that I've logged. Obviously, it makes sense to show that on my feed. We also have the ability to broadcast tasks from Evolution. So as an example here, I've got lift maintenance as an announcement. You see it's got a slightly different icon. So what we're actually able to do within Evolution is broadcast these tasks out to At Your Service users for those buildings. Also on the building feed, we have tasks that we are interested in. So again, I'll show you a demonstration of that later on, where I can actually go to log a task, see that somebody else has logged it, and to save that duplicate call, I'll just mark myself as interested in that call or subscribe to the updates for that call. So let's just jump into logging a task. Now I'll log a nice easy one to begin with. So if I just go to my little man down here and browse catalog, you'll see exactly the same catalog that I just created in the config app. So you see all my categories that I created. And again, this is where we was talking about the different terminology that, that I would see as an end user compared to what you might see within Evolution. So I'm going to report a too hot call. Now, obviously behind the scenes, that might be categorized as HVAC or whatever it might be, but from an end user's point of view, I've just got a comfort issue, okay? So I'm going to go into comfort, and I'm then going to say there's an issue with my air conditioning, and at this point, I'm going to say I'm too hot. And again, you can start to see where all the customizable text and imagery comes in at these screens. At this point, I'll just hit continue. I could change my location at this point, or I could add any specific information that I see fit. At this point, I'll just skip that and hit continue. It shows me a confirmation page, again, just confirming exactly what I'm logging and where I am, and I'll hit confirm request.
Carl, we're talking about keeping that language really straightforward, aren't we? Everyday sort of language to maximise that user engagement. They're not going to be put off by sort of FM terminology or contractor terminology they would use internally to run the contract. It's just simple language, straightforward language that actually behind the scenes translates into more technical language back in Evolution, doesn't it?
Absolutely that. And I think the example I always give is something like building fabric. Okay, we all know, and probably everyone in this call knows what building fabric is, but as an end user or a person walking around an office, what is building fabric? Is it a carpet? Is it a curtain? Yeah. So obviously we can totally change the terminology that the end users see and make it really nice, simple, easy to use for them. That task is logged now. So if I go back over to Evolution, this is my task grid within Evolution. I'll just refresh that. What you'll now see is my too hot call has come in. So basically from At Your Service, I think I tapped maybe 5 or 6 times. If I now open this task up, what you'll see is that I've got every piece of detail I'll need for that particular task, okay? So I've got all of my reporter details. It knows exactly who I am, my contact details, my building, my location. Importantly, it knows the correct instruction set, the correct contract, priority, discipline category, and obviously any additional comments that I would have added there. If we go into a slightly different example, and again, I'll just switch back to the At Your Service screen. If you remember the survey that I created earlier for the too cold call, again, I'll go through Browse Catalog. Again, I'll go through Comfort and I'll go through Air Conditioning. This time I'll select too cold. Again, looks very similar with all of our customizable text. All looks very nice. But this time when I hit continue, because of that survey behind the scenes, I'm now prompted to fill in those additional bits of information for the help desk and also for the engineers if they're using Go devices. This will all be pushed down. Everybody will be seeing the same amount of information. So again, as we did earlier, if I'm not the only person affected, it will ask me who else is affected. So I'll say there's some more. If there's a thermostat in the room, it would ask me to give a temperature. In this case, I'll say no. Are the windows and doors shut? Yes, they are. Are there any obvious drafts? No, there aren't. So I can now tap next. Again, I could change my location at this point, add in additional requirements, go to my confirmation page and confirm my request. At that point, we'll just place the phone down. We'll switch back to Evolution. Again, refresh our task grid. You'll see instantly we now have this new call. Again, it looks exactly the same as the old one with all my correct details, knows who I am, knows where I am, knows exactly the instruction set I chose. But this time, because we had the additional survey and the additional follow-up questions, we now have a new icon in our task screen here. And once I tap on here, you will see exactly the survey as I saw it as the end user. So all of that additional information that the end user has provided, the help desk can now see. So they should now have all of the information they need to correctly assign the job out to the correct operative.
So that's a common challenge that we hear is around empowering the end user to supply as much information as possible, because the help desk don't always get that from the point of call login, especially when it's self-service. So what we're doing is trying to drive as much information as we can to empower that end user. And in some cases, well, self-diagnose, that option is available as well for them to actually work out, do I need to log this task or not? Can I be guided through some steps that prevent me from logging this task? But ultimately, we're collecting as much information up front from that end user who's experiencing that problem in the field, and equally as well passing through the help desk and then to the results, aren't we? So it's a constant flow of correct data, if you like.
Absolutely. I think there's a few points to touch on there. Absolutely. So you mentioned the self-diagnosis thing. The survey designer is so complex that we can add as much information or as little information as we want, but we can do things like embed videos, YouTube links, links off to instruction manuals, those kind of things. So we can provide the user with as much information as we need. But yeah, on the flip side of that, absolutely, we can empower that user to give us as much information as we need. But also, I think importantly, we're saving time on the sort of backwards and forwards between the help desk and the end user. As obviously that's one big advantage. But the second big advantage of that is that it's all in that one combined central area. So it's not lost in somebody's email. It's not a phone call to a help desk operative or whatever. It's all in that task for everybody to see forevermore. Somebody goes off on holiday, all the information is still there. There's an email in an inbox somewhere. That's it's not going to be pushed down to a resource. So everything is against that task. Everybody who's involved in that task can then see it. We'll just carry on with a couple more examples of logging tasks. We touched on payments earlier within the config utility. So if I go to Browse Catalog again, I will now pick additional services here at the bottom. And these are just a few of the examples I mentioned earlier. So if we were to say we offer something like a key cutting service maybe, which again is outside of the contracted works, and it's a chargeable thing to the end users because they've lost their key. We can tap on key cutting here, and straight away you'll notice it looks slightly different where we've got a price basically shown on here. Now this one actually does have a survey attached to it as well, because at this point we're saying, well, what type of key is it? So we're actually saying it's a pedestal key, the identification number is whatever it might be, and we can send that off. Now this time, when I get to that confirmation page and I go to send off the task, before it actually creates the job in Evolution, it's going to request payment from me as the end user. So at this point, we're punching out to a payment gateway. So it's probably important to note at this point, Evolution at your service, doesn't hold any of this payment information, so there isn't no security concerns or anything like that. The payment gateway handles all of that for us. So at this point, I'm going to try and tap in the correct box. Now, Carl, what's your credit card number again? I think it's this.
Quick, let me just block my card.
Hopefully that was the right one. There we go, and that's now gone through. Brilliant, thank you, Carl. So if we switch back to Evolution and again refresh the task grid, again instantly we now have a new task. Again, all categorized correctly with all the correct details. We have a couple of additional fields now. So against the Financials tab, right at the bottom here, we can see, first of all, there was a customer payment associated to this task of £4.99. There's a couple of different payment types that we'll support in the future. Obviously, at the moment, we are just talking about full payment up front because we're talking about very small works. So you can see that payment type is customer full payment up front, and our status over here, obviously, is the payment has been received. So there we have a full task paid for by the end user. Again, back to at your service, and again, back to the config app we spoke about appointments. So what I'm going to quickly do here is log another call, but this time I'm going to log a call for an air conditioning service. So obviously at this point, I'm going to need an engineer to come visit my property and carry out this service for me. So at this point, we can actually prompt the end user to say, when is the best time for our engineer to come and visit you? So we'll go through here, everything looks the same until we get to this confirmation page where you'll now see a few extra fields. Now these days and slots are all configured within Evolution. So these can look however you like. We have them set up for weekday, weekend. So I'll say it needs to be on a weekday, and then our slots are sort of AM, PM basically. So I'll say it needs to be on a weekday in the morning, or it could be I need it ASAP, or it could be I'm flexible, like whenever. But I'll hit confirm here.
And Carl, certain services as well can be dependent on appointments or not. So you can have a mix, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is all set up, at a specific service level. So within that config app, I said for this particular service, it requires an appointment. For the rest of them, we don't. So flick it back into Evolution, refreshing my task grid. You'll now see that I've got my service here. This is a great example of the service in at your service being called air conditioning service, I think it was called, but the actual instruction set within Evolution is a standard HVAC service. So it's a really good example of the two services kind of having slightly different names. So this one had an appointment. So you'll see over on the right-hand side, we have some additional information, basically that the customer's requested a specific date on a weekday in the morning. And also if I was to then go and assign this task, go to the open planner. So this is then, I'm now sort of the scheduler, if you like. If I just cut this down to just a few people, so it takes a little bit less time to load. You'll now see basically what it does is it highlights the slot that I've selected. There you go. So you can now see I've picked this particular resource, and it's telling me that's when I should be trying to assign that job. So at that point, I can obviously then just drag that task into that slot, and we now know it's in the correct appointment slot for the end user. I think I've got a couple more examples of tasks to show us. So let's get rid of that. Come back to at your service. So we've done the appointments. Oh, we touched on portering, didn't we, in the config app earlier? So at this point, I'll just go and log a task. And this time I'll say it's a portering type task. And I say I want some furniture moved. So at this point, once I go to my location selection screen, you'll now see I have two different locations, one for pickup, one for drop off. So at this point, I can say, take this particular piece of furniture from the main office to the boardroom, hit continue, confirm that request. Switch back over to Evolution, refresh my grid. You now see I have furniture move at the top here. And this time when I open the task, we've got a from location of office space and also a to location of boardroom. That's probably the last example of going through the browse catalog. We also support, and you might have seen the icon pop up when I tap my little man down here, we also support the idea of scanning locations or assets. and again, NFCs or QR codes. So that can do a couple of different things. So first of all, if I go to scan an asset barcode at this point, this will now go and do a live lookup to evolution based on that QR code that I've just scanned, and you can now see I've scanned a particular coffee machine. The first thing it does, it takes you to a landing page for that particular asset, and it shows you any outstanding tasks for that particular asset. So obviously, if I was about to log that the coffee machine needed refilling, at this point, I could actually say, I'm not going to log that. Save duplicate calls, which is obviously a good thing for the help desk. And then from me, I could actually say that I'm in the loop, and I could subscribe to the updates. I won't do that for this one. I'll go one step further, because I'm actually going to log that the coffee machine is broken. Now at this point, when I hit add new request, what it's actually going to do is filter that whole service catalog that we had just for the services that are applicable to this particular asset classification, obviously coffee machine in this case. So you can see that I've only got 3 available options for that particular asset classification. So again, the example I always use is things like, I'm not going to be able to log that, you know, I'm too hot while I'm logging a coffee machine call or something like that, or I'm not going to be able to log that the toilet's broken when I scan a kitchen and those kind of things. So this really helps, again, just with the user experience, making it as simple as possible. I can now, you know, scan that particular asset, I can tap broken, I can hit continue, and then I can confirm that request. If we just quickly pop back into evolution, what we're going to see now is, again, not only has it got all the correct reporter details, task details, etc., we've also now got the asset code associated to this task as well, which is obviously really important to get, you know, a true sort of asset service history for our assets.
So in that case, Carl, we're driving good quality data again through the user, maximising their engagement and making sure that we've got that back in the help desk for them to actually work with a solid foundation, if you like, as to what's going on with that task.
Exactly that. And again, you know, it's super simple for the end users to use. You know, go out to an asset and scan it. We're not asking you to trawl through different categories and drop downs and all those kind of things. It is just walk up to a thing, scan it, and it's there.
Yeah.
We touched on scanning, obviously in the previous one. I just want to do one more scan here, and I want to show you this time if we log into a location. So I've logged into a particular location, and again, the first thing it does is it shows me all the different outstanding calls for that particular location. Now, what I'm going to do in this case, I was actually going to log that I was too hot, and again, we touched on it briefly earlier. What I can actually do, rather than now go through and log the call and have duplicate calls in the help desk and all those kind of things that are just a pain, I can actually say here, keep me in the loop for this particular task of too hot. So you'll see now it changes from keep me in the loop to you're in the loop. So that's kind of my journey finished now with that particular task. So I can now back out, and if I look now at the feed, you'll actually see that it's now at the top of my feed. So I've now subscribed to that task basically. So even though I haven't logged it, when it's assigned, when it's completed, yeah, I'll be able to see that from my feed. So in the case of the coffee machine being broken, I can be the first in the queue when it's fixed. One of the last things I want to talk about your service is communication. And I know Paul's going to touch a bit more on communication later on, but one of the things I want to show you on here is, again, just trying to replicate the experience of what we had previously with, you know, phones or emails. We're actually able to communicate from the end user to the help desk through at your service. So if I use my coffee machine broken task that we did earlier, and I go into my timeline, the timeline, I should probably mention, is obviously where you'll see all of the kind of updates that you need to see against this particular task, so if it's assigned, completed, and all those kind of things. But also we can use this as communication backwards and forwards with the help desk for this particular task. So at this point, it could be that I logged this a few days ago and nothing's happened. So I could actually chase the help desk through this app. So I could at this point say, hi, could I have an update, please? At that point, I can hit my little send icon. Now what we'll see is obviously my message appears in my device, and if I flick back to evolution and I go into my coffee machine broken task, what you'll see in the event log, just maximize this window for you, is customer commented on task, hi, could I have an update, please? Now, a couple of things can happen with that. We do have a whole external communications section within Evolution. We also have the ability to push browser notifications to help desk users when customers comment on tasks. So there's some really clever things we can do around this. But also as a help desk operator, I can now message the end user back from here. So if I create a new event with a certain event type, which is message to customer, and I can say your task will be assigned shortly. I'll save that. So I'll just refresh this grid and you should see it now appearing here. So you can see that I've now, again, this is the important thing to note, is obviously if this was a personal email, from a help desk operative, that would be lost in my outbox. So wouldn't necessarily see those replies unless we copied and pasted it into the event log. Obviously here now everybody can see that communication going backwards and forwards. And if I were to flick back to at your service, and I go back into my timeline for that particular task, you'll now see the message back from the service provider. So again, from the end user's point of view, everything in one place. From the help desk operative's point of view, everything in one place.
So we're really establishing that channel of communication, aren't we, between the help desk and the end user, the reporter? Because that's one of the things that we get asked a lot about, is around, well, how can we make that communication with our end users and reporters as efficient as possible and real time as well? So this is what At Your Service offers, isn't it? That link back into the help desk to keep that communication flowing between them.
Correct. And not only the help desk as well, it's important to note, because it's all event based, if you're using the Go solution, all your engineers will have all this history as well. So the engineers will be able to view the whole history of the chat.
Yeah, so they'll get the full details of what's gone on before the job's been assigned. Yeah, good point.
Exactly that. At this point, I'm going to hand back to Paul. That concludes my demo. So bear with me 1 second.
Yeah, let's go. There we go. Hopefully you can see my screen again. Okay, and I promised you this earlier, Carl B. But just to finish off on what Carl was saying, obviously that's a pretty comprehensive mobile app that we put in the hands of the workplace operatives. The plan is, and this is currently roadmap, so in full transparency, this is not yet released, but just to give you a preview of where we're going with At Your Service, we see it as being part of the full workplace experience. So if you're still using Reach, and we have quite a lot of customers that are quite mature in their use of Reach and have been using it for decades now, or Singular probably, there is still a place for that At Your Service call logging experience within the Reach framework, or even potentially within the Evolution and Connect framework as well. So on screen at the moment, I've got a mock-up of, it's actually an Evolution page, but the principle is the same, that you have the widget framework. And within that, the plan is that we will have a version of a new type of widget, which is the call logging experience that Carl's just shown you, that triage where it walks you through the different categories and subcategories to eventually arrive at a service request with a service request survey behind it. And all of that is coming to Evolution, Connect and Reach, hopefully very soon in 2023. Okay, so going back to our personas, so at this point we've covered pretty much everybody that could have an account within the system. So your clients, the managers, the FMs, the mobile workplace operatives. What we're going to look at now is how you can take that even further and extend engagement. So it's not just about people that you need to set up having accounts. Potentially it could be people that are just casual users that walk into your facilities, members of the public. So if you're running a retail environment, you've got a lot of footfall where people will just be using common facilities like washrooms or common areas that need to be cleaned, and you want them to be able to report fault. You want to empower them to record service issues or even give feedback. And that's where service request surveys come in. It uses, I can't remember whether you had this in your demo. You definitely show the outputs of it, Carl. We haven't really shown the designer itself, how you create these forms, but every time we talk about surveys, and we talk about it a lot because we use it in so many different places, and it can be used for lots of different things, from site inductions, supplier onboarding, customer satisfaction. All of them use the same designer principle, which is, as you get little videos playing for you now, this drag and drop designer where you can just have a toolbox of different elements, so questions, form layouts, you can organize them into pages. And you get a sense here, I'm not going to show you the full thing, but you get a sense from the things that I'm showing you here that there's a lot of configuration that you can do here in terms of what you show, the questions you ask, how they're laid out, how they're visualized, options that you give people, different question types. Obviously, you can prompt people for signatures, prompt people to upload images, take pictures, upload files. And it has a lot of conditional logic built in too. So depending on how you want to design your forms, you can take people down different routes, prompt them with different questions, skip whole sections, show and hide different sections, make things compulsory depending on the answers that they give as they submit it. So in this example, I've just used that designer to very quickly create a basic form. And in this case, the use is, I want this to be a simple form for somebody to just casually submit a service request. If you imagine within your building, there's different ways that people could instigate one of those forms. It could be that there's a URL that sends them a link. It could be that there is a QR code stuck to a wall or on a piece of paper somewhere that they can scan. And in this case, this example, I've put different QR codes throughout my building, and each QR code corresponds to a location. And as I scan that, or as a member of the public scans it, all it does is it opens up that form in a publicly accessible page. This is a form that you've designed yourself, so it's up to you what information you ask them for. In this case, I've got them to categorize the service call, and then I'm going to get them to pick a service type and then submit it, and that's it. That call then, that survey is submitted directly into Evolution, at which point it's up to you what happens to it. You can have it action that it's just it comes through as a request that somebody reviews and turns into a task, or you can use the workflow module to automatically create a task within your Evolution system. So you get a sense there of how you can bring a new type of persona and expand customer engagement for work order requests. So we've covered pretty much three main personas there for work order engagement. And I'm going to move on to communication. And Carl's probably already shown you everything that we would show you for out your service communication. And the beauty about your service is all of that comms is in-app. So as an end user, everything they need to see is in one place and it's in the context of the task. But for other people, so for clients, for users of Evolution, people that don't necessarily have the mobile app, we do have options, pre-configured templates of different communication types that you can set up in your system. And I've got here some examples of the different points in the life of a work order request that might trigger one of these updates. And if you're in touch with the GPS team, you'll know that these, GPS is our consultancy team, I should clarify. That is, there is a suite of out-of-the-box workflows that you can use, which will do all of these automated correspondence, and they're fully configurable by yourselves. So you can decide what they look like. You can decide what logos you use, what fonts, what background colors you have, and importantly, you can tweak them per contract or per supplier. So you can generate different emails that look slightly different depending on the client that you're managing within an enterprise system. And you can turn features on and off. It's up to you whether or not you let people follow links to log into Reach or Evolution, depending on what system they're using. It's up to you whether you turn on features like the ability to unsubscribe if they're receiving too many emails, or turn on things like rearranging appointments if you're using the appointments feature. And all of these emails are responsive as well. So you can see here from these screenshots, this is actually an email that we've received, and this is the page that's open for it for appointments. But when that's viewed on a mobile device, it scales perfectly just to suit the form factor of the device that you're viewing it on. I'm going to move on to the third challenge now, which is customer satisfaction. And within Reach, and within Evolution, we have a customer satisfaction module, which is part of the core system. So if you have Evolution, you very likely have the customer satisfaction module, and you can design your own templates. And at the moment, those templates are fairly straightforward. They're just a series of questions with question types. And what happens at the moment is you can generate, on completion of a task, you can send people links for them to submit a form. And when you're working with people that are, have Reach, so people like the clients, people like the workplace occupants, those forms will appear like the image I've got here. So it's a page that just opens within your Evolution site. That will auto generate forms. So the results that come in will automatically be linked to the task. But we also have another option, and this goes back to those communication templates that we looked at earlier. One of those communication templates can send an email that looks a bit like this, which has a very, very simple CSF feedback form. So this doesn't actually require any login. All it does is it gives them 3 options. And within the email, if I click one of those buttons, it will give them a nice thank you message, and it'll submit their response directly into the Evolution system to create the CSF result, to update all the dashboards and reports, but without the user having to log in at all. And we mentioned at your service, all of these customer satisfaction forms that you generate from Evolution will integrate with at your service as well. So you can do what you do now, and you can generate CSF forms, link them to tasks, have them show up in at your service. But you can also, within at your service, you can automate all of those notifications that somebody needs to do a CSF. It's up to you whether you say a user has to do a CSF for every job, or you can say that they have to do it for 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 or 1 in 20. You choose that limit, or you choose that frequency within your configuration of the app, and it automatically just gets sent to them when the task is completed. So as you can see from the screenshot here, they'll have a toast notification, tell them that we consider the job is done and we want them to get their feedback from it. And then the form that they see looks a lot like our survey design form. So they can rate services, they can answer yes/no questions, they can give a grade, all of those types of things. And just like the CSF forms that we've seen in Reach, those results just automatically come back into Evolution. Later we'll come on to how you can visualize that. Sorry, Carl, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, we live in a world of, feedback at the moment, and we always want to know what's going on. We're always being sent surveys. So, any possible way we can maximize that user engagement and feedback, where we're doing via the email templates or at your service. But I'm sure you just mentioned, but just worth highlighting again that some of those actions can have automations off the back of them, can't they? To, look into things that aren't quite right, or flag to certain users, feedback that is more on the negative side, and then for allowing clients to then act upon that.
That's exactly right. And pretty much everything that hits the Evolution database, you've got the freedom to sort of trigger actions, automate things off the back of them. With CSFs, quite a lot of that is built into it. That you can actually, in the design of the CSF forms, you can determine what constitutes something that requires follow-up. So there's like on a basic CSF template, you can determine that there's a requires follow-up flag. But we're taking that even further. So very shortly, in the survey designer that we showed you a bit earlier, I think I showed the conditional logic, where you can define that based on the answers that are given, it fires an action. And at the moment, all of those actions are about changing the behavior of the form that people are interacting with. Very soon, what you'll be able to do is, within the design of the form, you'll be able to determine an action that gets fired when it gets submitted. So you could say that based on an answer saying that its satisfactory score is 1, because of that, it sends an email to the building manager, or it creates a follow-up task for somebody to action. All of those things will actually be embedded within the design of the survey forms themselves. Finally, just to visit the last persona, Peter Public, you also have, similar to the option that we showed you earlier for the survey forms that are completely unauthenticated is the wrong word. It's just that you don't need to actually give people a username password to log into the system. There is security around it, which is important to mention, that there is a sort of a token-based system behind the scenes, that when you generate these URLs, you can set them to expire. They're obscured as well, so all the parameters behind the scene, that the scenes that link it to a task or a building, all of that's completely hidden from the user. They can't spoof these URLs to sort of phish service requests or kind of spoof you, spam you with different customer satisfaction responses. As I say, you can choose whether these expire within 24 hours or 7 days, or you can choose whether they expire on completion, one time only, or multiple submission. All those things are in your control. But with the public surveys, there's two ways that you could do that. You could send people emails, like we did previously, or you could take a similar approach to the service request, which is throughout your facilities, you could have different QR codes within. So the example might be a cleaning facility, where as people exit a cleaning facility or a toilet, washroom, anything like that, you could have a "how did we do" QR code on the wall, and then when they scan it, it just prompts them with a very, very simple satisfaction survey that they can submit really quickly, get the result back into the Evolution system. So again, you've engaged a completely new persona that you don't have to worry about whether they are part of the Evolution ecosystem. They're just casual users. They're people that have used the facility once, or members of the public that are passing through. And the important thing is, all of this, if you're actually going to drive improvement, if you want to take the feedback that you get from clients and use it to demonstrate to clients that you're performing to a certain level, or even if you're not performing to a certain level, you can analyze the things that are going wrong and use it to drive improvement. You need dashboards, you need reports. So again, the intuitive dashboard product comes with some out-of-the-box dashboards to gauge customer satisfaction. You can view overall satisfaction. You can drill down into specific questions that you're asking people, different categories of questions. You can drill into specific facilities, or even reporters or reporter contact classes. All those types of things are part of the standard dashboard pack. And Evolution itself just has some very customizable reports that you can write, because all the data is in your database. All of those CSF results are returned. You can choose to cut them, report them however you choose, with some out-of-the-box reporting. So I think we've covered, just to return to our persona screen, you get a sense there of how we use the solutions within the product to just extend your engagement, your communication, and your way of gauging feedback to all the different parts of the people that use your facilities. At that point, I think I'm going to hand back to you, Carl, if you want to close this out. If you've got any questions that you want to ask, or anything to finish this off.
No, I think it's been really useful. I think we've really sort of touched on all of those sort of real world challenges that we sort of set the scene for at the beginning of the webinar. I think, yeah, it's just really to close out, really, in terms of next steps. You know, we want to continue the discussion with you, you know, of all of the things that we've talked about today, everything that we've shown you. You know, it's important that we continue these conversations. And that's really starting out with your account manager. So continue the conversation, talk about the problems that you are facing, whether it's within your organization or with your client's organization, to see exactly how we can help. Anything you've seen today as well, product or solution wise, you know, if you want to look a little bit deeper into that, then we can get to demonstration range, and we can focus that on the specific areas that you need to. And we want to share in the success, because we have had a lot of success in a lot of the areas that we've talked about today, a lot of the products. And I think it's vital that we start to receive that feedback and share that success, because, you know, it can be replicated. Everyone can have their unique spin on that. But I think it's great that we can start to share that amongst everyone. And that's what we'll do throughout this webinar series as well. So we are aiming to give you as much value and input into these webinar series as well, to make sure that you're getting maximum output from it. So look, I just want to say, Carl, Paul, thank you very much for your effort and your time, and thank you everyone for listening, and we'll speak to you soon.